Welcome back, YouTube. Welcome to the channel. So today we're going to talk about the new build, my Bone Storm and Blood Mist build. So I have to, right out the get-go, I have to kind of give you the pros and the cons. I do like the build, but it does have cons. I have another tankier build that I played with earlier that doesn't have this, has the same cons, but it just doesn't die as much, even though this doesn't die much at all. So let's get into this. The pros, this is going to be super fun to play. A lot of big numbers. You're in the fight. You're constantly fortified. You constantly have barriers. You're just in there just doing damage. It's very fun. Another thing, pro, you kill these big mobs. Like your Bone Storm just kills these big mobs. You can farm good. You can get experience good. You can get gold good. Those are some of the good things. Now let's talk about the bad things. The bad things is, number one, the Butcher. The Butcher is definitely going to be a bad thing. Bosses, solo mobs, beginning of fights when you don't have your barrier or your fortify up yet. And then also when your Bone Storm and your Blood Mist are on cooldown and you have like 5 seconds to wait and maybe my Blight's on cooldown or I don't have the essence for it, it's just kind of like you can't do anything. All right, so YouTube, let's talk about my build. Let's talk about what we're using. We're using the Blight. We're using the Bone Storm. We're using the Blood Mist. There's just so many things we're using. We got 2 skills real quick here just to get down there. We're throwing it into Blight. We're going to Blight. We're doing a Supernatural. This is just going to allow us to do 15% more damage. The Blight slows them down. So Blight basically throws something and then it pools. And then once it hits them, that pool just starts doing damage. Basically, it's a damage over time. And we got Blood Mist. We come all the way up to Blood Mist, Ghastly, just to get the corpses. Basically, we're going to have unlimited amount of barrier and fortify. We're going to have like fortify all the time. Like fortify, you're almost going to be 100% fortified. And that's kind of like my spec into fortify. Like since I'm since I'm always in fortify, I have a lot of damage reduction while fortified. It's just extra damage reduction. Also, let's dive into a couple of pieces of gear that really help me push the envelope onto this fortification. So not only does the fortification give you an additional 10% reduction of damage, but I have my pants that gives me another 11%. And then I will have chest giving me another 11%. And granted, I used to have more fortification reduction of damage on my shield. No longer have a shield. So anyways, I basically have another 22% increased fortification reduction of damage. So I'm walking around all the time with pretty much 30% guaranteed reduction of damage, period. I don't really have any skills that overpower, so it is what it is. But basically, Blood Mist gets you out of everything, just makes you immune, so nobody can even target you. It slows you down. There is a skill, there is an aspect that can keep you the same speed. I didn't use that. I do like speed, and it also heals you. And then I just threw it over here. Skeleton Warriors, more life, increases life and damage. This is going to be one of the big damage things is going to be Corpse Explosion, obviously. We're going to go to Corpse Explosion. It becomes a darkness skill, basically making it shadow damage. I like doing shadow damage. Shadow damage is actually pretty cool. That's why I went Blight. I was messing around with Blight. I actually had Bone Prism up. I still could do Bone. I don't know. It's kind of the main reason why I didn't want to do Bone Prison is just like the maneuverability, especially with PC. Like when you would click, it wants to cast that. And I just didn't like the way I maneuvered around. And the bone prison, it only is useful in a couple of scenarios. Like rarely, like when your corpse tentacles pull everybody in, then like perfect time to use that, because that's just going to be a crazy amount of damage. But it's just, you're just not going to use it as much as like you see people on YouTube. They'll put their little things out and they'll be like, look at all this damage. It's like 10 seconds out of a 10-minute fight. It's just, I go for things that I'm going to use more often. I'm going to use my blight more often. Anyways, let's get past that. So we're doing corpse explosion, enhance, increase radius, obviously. This is going to make this a darkness skill, and then releases extra shadow damage after that for 4 seconds. So that's going to be a big thing. That's going to be a big thing when we go into our blood mist. We'll jump into our blood mist when we get to the gear. Put one into here just so we can get this. This increases your damage for every 6 seconds after consuming a corpse. We're going to be consuming corpses all the time. So I threw one into Death Reach because I had a skill up here that I wasn't even using. So I threw it into Death Reach. Maybe this will be a thing. Maybe it's not. We'll see. That's just when people are further away from my melee range, they'll do more damage. Kind of when my Shadow Blight procs and things like that. So Death Embrace. Enemies close take more damage from you and deal less, right? Amplify damage. Obviously, this is going to be great because we're going to have our heart's going to, everybody's going to be decrepified at all times. When you get close to me, you will have a decrepify on you at all times. So everybody's going to be cursed for me that I'm hitting. So this is a necessity. Decrepify. This is the bread. This is the, what do you want to call it? This is the potatoes. This is the meat and the potatoes of the build, really. So, and it also reduces incoming damage as well. So it slows them down. Basically, whenever they get in close melee range, it's going to slow them down, and then it's going to reduce their damage. This is going to allow it a 10% chance to stun. This is really why we got it. This is a 15% chance for you to reduce your cooldowns for a second. And this is a lucky hit. So every lucky hit, and that's why this build, like, we try to get as much lucky hit as we can, because we want to get, like, when these enemies are decrepified, which is pretty much all the time, every time we hit them, it reduces our cooldown. So that's why we're going to have our Bone Storm pretty much up 24/7. Our Blood Mist is going to be up 24/7. When those two are down, it's kind of a weird, awkward situation. But Corpse Tendrils, this is going to be the milk and potatoes as well. This just pulls everybody in, stuns them for 3 seconds, and it does a crap load of damage. With one of our aspects, it increases by almost 50%. So this is just going to slow them down when it starts to pull them. And when it slows them down, we have things on our build that when they're slowed, we start doing more damage to them. This is going to make them vulnerable when you pull them in. This is kind of my only vulnerable that I really got. You can do Bone Prison for vulnerable. Nah, I didn't really. I mean, it felt like it broke all the time. It was kind of useless. I just didn't like the Bone Prison that much. But anyways, this gets them vulnerable for 3 seconds. I don't have a lot of vulnerable. It's not something that I plan on. Like, I have very low, but I just do so much shadow damage. We don't really do vulnerable. Darkness skills, pretty much all of our stuff is going to be darkness. Darkness is just another word for shadow damage. If they're slowed, 9% bonus damage to our stunned or immobilized. These two can stack. So if they're slowed and then they get stunned, they'll stack. Bonuses stack and apply to shadow damage by your minions as well. When you damage enemies with darkness skills, they take increased shadow damage from you and your minions for 2 seconds. And it stacks 3 times. So, and then I also got another one of this. This just makes me a little bit faster whenever I'm damaging them with shadow damage. I need speed. Necros, I mean, other than the Bone Mist is our get out of jail free card, and we're kind of like always using it. So I guess in a sense, we do have a lot of get out of jail free cards, but we don't have a lot of movement speed. We're really slow. So anything that gives us movement is going to be beneficial. So I threw this into Inspiring Leader. Basically just makes my minions attack faster. I'm always going to be healthy. I'm always pretty much going to be healthy unless I'm dying, obviously. But I'm always going to have barrier, and I'm always going to be fortified. It's just every single time. So this basically just makes it so your minions can't get one-shotted. Maximum hit could take is 30% life. this is going to be a breadwinner as well. Bone Storm. This thing crushes. And this thing does everything shadow damage. Everything is shadow damage on this bad boy. It just swirls around you for 10 seconds and hits everything. Your next one right here reduces damage incoming by 15%. This guy, your critical strike is increased by 20%. So you have 20% more crit. You take less damage. Then we're going to do Shadow Blight. Shadow Blight is the breadwinner. This thing just kills everything. So shadow damage, every time you're doing shadow damage, so every time you got this thing going, any of your shadow damage skills, anytime shadow hits, Shadow Blight procs for 2 seconds, you and your minions deal increased damage, 10% to these enemies. Every 10th time an enemy receives shadow damage from you or your minions, when they're affected by Shadow Blight, they take an additional 1,500 to 1,800 damage. This thing procs all the freaking time, and it absolutely crushes. So that's our build, our Paragon. I kind of switched it up a little bit. I just put this one on there. I just think this is going to be good. Obviously, I don't have the intellect, but it's just going to... Me and my minions are going to do more damage. It's just a consecutive it's not like if this procs or that procs. It's just whenever you and your minions damage an enemy, that enemy takes 1% increased damage. And it could go up to 12%. So it stacks up to 12 times, right? This just increases my shadow damage over time. Shadow damage over time really isn't that crazy, but you and your minions deal 10% increased damage to enemies affected by shadow damage. So I pretty much always have shadow damage going on. So this is an extra 10%. What do we got right here? So crowd control, like we were talking about, when they're slowed, when they're anything, my Blight slows them down. My Decrepify slows them down. So when they're slowed, this thing is hitting for increased 10%. And then if they get stunned, it goes to 20%. Multiplicative. So it's just, when the corpse tendrils proc, it just starts crushing. This just increases your critical strike damage. Like, critical strike increased damage that are not healthy. So once they get, I think it's 70%. It's 70 or 80%. I can't remember off the top of my head. But once they start doing that, they'll start doing more damage to them. Let's see what I got right here. Enemies affected by curse taking increased 10% damage. So there's just so many multiplicatives on this thing. The Paragon board is a very understated thing. Like, all these things just start adding up. Now we'll talk into the gear. I got pretty much most of the aspects where I want them pretty good. Some of, like, if you look at this, I got rid of my shield. I used to be just like a tank. I haven't uploaded a video on that, but I just had I was just a tank, and I was just crushing these 70s, but then I was like, I kind of want to, I wanted to get this thing on there. So this is an additional 49% shadow damage increased for everything that has Decrepify. Everything that's gonna be Decrepified. So shield, kind of all you could really put on shield that I liked was this Disobedience, and I wanted to move my Disobedience out, and I wanted more damage. So we got rid of the shield, and this just gives us more damage. So let's jump up here to the amulet. We have the Grasping Veins. Space. This is your corpse tendril thing. So when the corpse tendril starts grabbing, your crit strike goes up 20%. And then once your corpse tendril does damage, it increases it by 39%. So when the corpse tendril hits, things start dying fast. Like, you'll just see it just starts going. This increases my damage to Shadow Blight. Shadow Blight is my passive that I was talking about. This is the thing. So yeah, basically once it procs that 10th hit, then I just start doing 130% increased damage for 6 seconds. Oh, I forgot. I got the barber. I got the barber. They actually fixed the barber now. The barber is so much better now. Basically, the barber before, like, when my storm shield would hit, it wouldn't give me barrier. So now it does, because it started absorbing into the barber. So I think it still absorbs, but I think it still gives you your skills, your aspects. Anyway, so that's the barber. It's a 2.6. I'm gonna probably upgrade this sooner. Probably not, but I anticipate hopefully upgrading this. So that's why I'm not using like a 2.3. I think barbers, the lowest time frame, the better. The more times it can proc. Yes, the multiplicative stuff will be less, but I want damage faster. That's the name of the game. Anyways, so I wanted to get to this Vicious Heart. This Vicious Heart, anytime you walk near a corpse, you automatically trigger your corpse explosion or your tendrils. So your tendrils actually only work if you're walking near people. You have this circle around you. Only when you walk near things is when that stuff can proc. So just so you guys are tracking, you have to walk near a corpse. And then that just deals more damage, reduction. So season 2, man, being a Necro, I don't know if I'm going to do a Necro without these things. Just make life so much easier. I know some of these, you look at these and I don't do vulnerable. You'd be like, Knox, why you got this? You don't even do vulnerable. I understand I don't do vulnerable, but each time Shadow Blight procs, it increases the Shadow Blight damage for 10 seconds by 29%. So basically you're dealing more damage when your passive procs. So that Shadow Blight just with these couple of skills just does so much. So this is where we do our Blood Mist. Our Blood Mist triggers corp explosions. It also reduces the cooldown every time the Blood Mist procs. And obviously we'll go back over here. Blood Mist forms a corpse. Oh, there's one thing. I don't even think I talked about this, guys. I'm sorry. I didn't even talk about this real quick. This is what gives us our Fortify. I missed this the whole time. I missed this, and this is literally like the thing that keeps us alive. When a corpse is formed, your skills give you Fortify. So, and obviously Fortify, you take reduced damage, but you're technically only fortified when you're max fortification. So, and that's maxing your health, right? So that's why that barrier plays into a factor. You have that barrier, so the barrier is constantly getting hit, but the storm shield, the bone storm is producing your barrier, so that barrier is always staying, and then you're getting that increased damage reduction. There's just so many things that just go crazy. So there's 2 benefits of that Fortify. Basically, you could kind of come into a fight initially, let's just say maybe a little bit of a break, and come in with like 75% HP. This is basically going to allow you to get your Fortify up faster to get your extra 10% damage. So if you're 100% HP, well, then you need to get your Fortify all the way up to your 100% HP. But if you're only at 75% HP, you only need to get your Fortify up to 76% HP fortification, right? So let's just say, you're at 7,500 at 75%. Well, you only need to get 75,001 to start getting fortification. So you have that extra 2,500 HP that you never had to reach, but you're getting that damage reduction. Whew. And then also another thing, the second benefit is when you're actually getting super low in a fight and you have to use, or not necessarily you have to use, but when you're super low HP and you are obtaining fortification, you're obtaining fortification through these lucky hit chances we talked about with our Hewed Flesh. So the Hewed Flesh, basically your damage hits somebody, you have a 12% chance to create a corpse. Every time you create a corpse, you get fortified. So that 12% plus, we slide over here, our lucky hit chance. So we got the 12% plus this, we got 60% chance of fortification just off that alone. And not only do we have that, we have Blood Mist in and of itself. That's going to create fortification through its ghastly Blood Mist, which is going to leave behind a corpse. That corpse is forming a corpse. So that form of corpse gets you fortification. So that's kind of there's a lot of nuances to this fortification. So that's what your Blood Mist will do. It'll create corpse explosions every second. It'll create a corpse of its own, and it'll trigger that too. So this is just so much damage. And when you're doing it in a line, like let's just say like all the guys are grouped, when you're doing it in a line, it's just like it almost looks like dominoes effect. So here's where we got the Disobedience. This is maxed out. Just something that reduces damage. Bone Storm. This is the Bone Storm. This thing increases our Bone Storm. Bone Storm consumes 8 corpses to increase its duration. So it immediately consumes corpses. Your Bone Storm to an additional 10 seconds. So this is what gives us our barrier. Each time Bone Storm damages enemies, you get barrier equal to 4% of your life. That's awesome. I'm basically running around with not fortify, but I'm basically running around with a barrier the entire time. It just makes me so hard to kill. This is just giving me more mages. Mages allow me to do more damage. Bone Storm, it's already a darkness skill, so it basically makes it a darkness skill, deals shadow damage. This thing does pretty good, but it just damages enemies. Just gives them a dot, and that dot is, we have some things in here that allow us to do more damage. So that's basically our build in a nutshell. Let's go over here. We got the Reapers. Reapers, I just want them forming corpses. Like, the more corpses I get formed, the more fortification I'm getting. I have these. I was doing it over here, stunning them. I just figured let them throw an extra one every, you know, they just throw an extra guy every 4 hits. This, I got a thing about, like, this increases, like, this is 30%, but it actually increases it way more than 30%. I don't understand it, but it does. Let's look at our crit damage. Our crit damage right now is at 278. Watch when I get rid of this. Let's just put it right here, right? Goes to 191. It goes up way more than 30%. So we're definitely doing that. I mean, that crit damage jumps, what was that, 110%? 190. So it goes up 80. Goes up 80 crit damage. That adds so much. When I do my build videos, I am going to kind of show how everything flows. Like, show like what skills I'm going to use. So these users. So what I want to do is I want to throw my blight on there. My blight triggers 15% increased damage, and then I'm going to throw my Bone Storm up. My Bone Storm is what's going to give me my barrier. If you can see, my barrier is going to get to my max HP. And I'm forming corpses, which is going to give me my fortification. So I'm basically just running around with full, I don't have full fortification right now. This is going to create more corpses, which is going to, see, my fortification is just maxed out now. My barrier is gone because I don't have my Bone Storm going. But this is in a nutshell what you're doing. Your Shadow Blight's procking. Everything's procking. This is just kind of how we do this bad boy. Throw my Blights on there, and then I'll go into the Blood Mist, and everything will just drop. My Corpse Explosions will just start blowing the bejesus out of everything. Those dudes, yeah, we have a lot of damage reduction, but we don't really want to take those hits. And that's kind of the, if you guys see that circle right there, that is actually what is your proximity, which is going to allow your, like, your Decrepify to proc. What is it? Your Vicious Heart to proc. You got to get it within range for all your stuff to start procking. This is going to drop all the Corpse Explosions. We're going to get this on there, get our barrier back up. Our barrier, your barrier maxes out to your HP. Was that a 6 mil? Throw the Blight on this dude. It'll do some, and then I'll do this with the Corpse Explosions. Corpse Explosions will explode. Barber starts procking. I'm going to try not to die today. I don't have my barrier. That's why. It's going to stack up my barrier now. See, my barrier just keeps going up, up, up. All right. I was being a dumbass.